a lot of food for thought, and we'll continue the discussion. At this time, I'd like to invite Nancy Jessett-Juergens to come up. She's the Director of Philanthropic Services at the Community Foundation of Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio. Nancy.
Thank you, Jan. I'm pleased to give the introduction for Jeff Glabaki. Jeff is president of one of our crown jewels of the Valley, the Raymond John Ween Foundation, which pursues a vision of empowered residents creating a healthy, vibrant, and economically stable Mahoning Valley community with equal opportunity for all. The foundation provides a combination of financial, technical, and training support across a set of highly focused priority issues to achieve resident engagement, organizational excellence, and networks for collective impact. Please help me welcome Jeff Glabaki.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, Emily, for the research. I think what you put together for us today really will help start an important conversation. Sharon, I think, Sharon, you started to get to the question of the why behind all this. And the why is, how do we find a way for the Mahoning Valley to become more economically competitive for all? I have a few minutes to talk about a project that a number of you in the room have been involved with, the Mahoning Valley Economic Competitiveness Project. And I hope that as we go forward with this project that many more of you will be engaged. It's a venture that really came out of many people's thinking, how can we find a strand or a thread of one or two things that people and organizations in our community can focus on, their attention, their human resource, their financial resource, in a way that we do start to become more competitive as a region, in Ohio, in the nation, and globally. When we talk about economic competitiveness, job development, education, all the issues, the factors that Emily was detailing, the world tends to break into these two camps that Brad mentioned, growth and opportunity. And I'm going to see if this is going to work for me. Do we have those growth and opportunity camp slides on here? Yes, okay. So as Brett started to talk about, the world tends to break into these two camps. The growth camp, proponents of economic growth, tends to be businesses, business associations, chambers, economic development organizations. And then across the aisle, so to speak, is the opportunity camp. And this is philanthropy. These are the social service organizations, labor, faith, advocacy groups. And what tends to happen is that these two camps talk past each other, or they don't talk, or they don't work well together, they don't play well together. One will run with scissors, and all kind of unfortunate things happen. This is not a phenomenon unique to our community. This happens everywhere. But what can we do about it to change the situation? As I was thinking about this, I was struck by an old TV commercial campaign, and I can't remember what beer it was, someone will remind me. But you remember the TV commercial where there's one group of people saying, tastes great, and the other group of people saying, less filling. No, tastes great, less filling. This is what's happening in the growth and opportunity conversation. We're all drinking and talking about the same beer, but we're looking at it in a very, very different fashion. And Brad's going to weave that into a conversation in another community, I have a feeling.
I'll put that here.
Yeah. It's always 5 o'clock somewhere. So I will talk about this project in a bit and tell you about what we've achieved thus far and what's going to happen. But I want to share with you some observations on why we think it's really critical to stitch together growth and opportunity to make this work for the Mahoning Valley. A few statistics, they're all very sobering, and many of you have heard these before. But for a number of reasons, these numbers have popped up in recent conversations. But these are really drivers of why we need to do this. I think you know that the city of Youngstown has the most significant degree of concentrated poverty in the country. In Warren, over 42% of families with related children under 18 have incomes below the poverty level. Over 51% of families with related children under 5 years have incomes below the poverty level. The average annual unemployment rates for African American Ohioans reached a post-recession high of 17% in 2009, and again in 2011. This year, it's 13%. Mahoning County led Ohio in population lost between July 2011 and July 2012. Young people are moving, more people are dying than being born. So these are not just markers about the challenges. These are blaring sirens. These are flashing red lights about our future. So we think that the Economic Competitiveness Project, which we lovingly call the Roadmap Project, is one way to bring the growth and opportunity camps together here in the Mahoning Valley. So what is this thing that I keep referring to? You will find in the information that was distributed, this one-pager with the pretty graphics. This was an 8-month venture involving over 80 people in the Mahoning Valley from both the growth and opportunity camps. You will see that we had a series of meetings. There was research done. There was asset mapping. There was community convenings. There was a way to call out a set of issues so that we could focus on or find that one thing that we could focus our energies on. The first stage of this planning project, the 8-month project, was funded by the Raymond John Ween Foundation, the Trumbull 100, and the Fund for Our Economic Future, and facilitated by Fourth Economy, a Pittsburgh-based economic development consulting firm that specializes in regional economic development. And they were selected through an RFP process by a subcommittee of those 80 people. The group identified these 3 issues to look at: talent, inclusion, and efficient government. And through this process of research, conversation, and focused deliberations, we ended up focusing on inclusive talent and asking the question of what can we do to move forward to address that issue. You also have in that package the executive summary of the work that was accomplished. And on page 2 is the key priority that rose above all other things, and that is that all Valley residents will have access to high-value employment opportunities, and that all employers will have access to a diverse pool of well-qualified workers. That's the horizon that we have articulated and defined and hope to move towards. So what happens next, now that we're done with this planning process? We're looking for implementation, and the executive summary calls for creating this community resource. We want to be very clear, this is not a new organization. It's not a new program. It's a new way of doing business here in the Mahoning Valley. We'll establish a reconfigured steering committee representing both growth and opportunity camps, and we will create working groups to tackle specific tasks. So we've moved beyond the planning. We are now to the stage of getting the work done. The specific action plans may include things like gathering data that help people and organizations make better decisions. We know that much of the research has been done, much of the data is out there, but it's not necessarily in places and in forms that help people process. We also look at finding ways to align our common work. So if there are different people doing the same thing, how can we come together and do that in a more effective way? And we also want to look at how we establish shared measurement. There's a lot of work going on out there in the subject area. Who and what are the things that are really making progress, that are really making achievement? Let's find out how they're doing that, and let's do more of it. The next stage of this project, which is the implementation, has received continued funding from the Raymond John Ween Foundation, an increase in funding from Trumbull 100, thank you, Diane, and also first-time funding from the Community Foundation of the Mahoning Valley and the Community Foundation of Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio. And the Fund for Economic Future has re-upped with their dedication of financial and staff time. And I want to thank Chris Thompson, who is lurking in the back there. Chris has done an incredible job in establishing what I would say very authentic relationships and work here in the Valley to help move this effort along. So in closing, we have some exciting news to share. The executive summary of this work called for creating a project coordinator position to help make this move forward faster. And we are happy to announce that we have engaged Jessica Borza as our collaboration coordinator starting this month. You may know Jessica as the project director of the Mahoning Valley Manufacturing Coalition. She will retain that part-time position while she's being the collaboration coordinator for this project. And we want to thank Dale Forrester and the board of the Manufacturing Coalition for being partners in letting us share Jessica's time and talent. Jessica brings real-world experience in working in both growth and opportunity camps, and I think she's going to do a really bang-up job. You will hear more about this in the coming months. If anyone here today wants to get involved, see Chris Thompson or I, and we're happy to get your names and talk more about what happens next. So, thank you very much. The executive summary is in your packet, so you can read more about what we hope to accomplish. And next up, we'll be moving to our panel. Give us just a few moments to get people set up at the table.
Okay, good morning. My name is Diane Sauer. I'm the president of Trumbull 100 in Trumbull County, and I also own and operate Diane Sauer Chevrolet, a local Chevrolet dealership. It's my pleasure today to introduce our panelists that are going to reflect on questions that we will be asking them. We welcome your participation in the question and answer session, and I will ask yourself as well as our panelists to respect the brevity of some of their answers so that we may have a lively discussion. We are all passionate people, and we like to expound on things occasionally, at least myself. Our panelists, starting from your left, our first lady is Molly Seals. Molly is a Divisional Vice President of Human Resources and Learning for Catholic Healthcare Partners and serves as the Chief Human Resource Officer of the Humility of Mary Health Partners in Youngstown. Molly is an active participant in the Economic Roadmap Project referenced by Jeff Glabaki, and she serves on several civic boards in the community. Next to her is Dale Forrester. Dale is the Vice President of General Operations at Star Manufacturing, a Vienna-based manufacturer of custom industrial equipment and machinery for a diverse range of industries, including mining, energy, and material handling. Dale is active in the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition, which champions the needs of the Valley's manufacturers, particularly as it relates to skilled workforce. Dale has a diverse background, and she has worked in education and social services and lived in Germany for 11 years. In her spare time, Dale is an artist. How much spare time is there, Dale? And then next to Dale is Joe Caruso. Joe is the president and CEO of Compass Family and Community Services, which operates several social service programs in the Valley, including the Center for Workforce Development and Financial Stability. Compass was formed in 2011 through the consolidation of the Bergman Group and the Family Service Agency. So thank you, panelists, for sharing your time and ideas with us today. I have several questions I would like each of you to address, and then I have specific ones for each of you. So starting with the general questions, and I'll start with Joe first. Do you see the need for more intentional efforts in this valley to promote growth and opportunity within the workforce?
Yes, I absolutely do see that need to have this discussion to how we can integrate the less filling and the taste great, going back to Jeff, of the growth and opportunity. Individuals we serve at Compass Family and Community Services in the Mahoning Valley represent a cross-section of our community, but we have a very targeted group of individuals who are underserved, underemployed, that have the capacity, have the ability, have the desire to enter into the workplace, but there are several obstacles or barriers that exist in getting there. But we are still nonetheless working with the individuals, and the individuals and their families are being very, very successful in being part of the growth and opportunity perspective.
Thank you. Dale, anything you'd like to add?
Absolutely, particularly in the manufacturing segment of our population, which is growing. It's growing a little more slowly than all of us had hoped. Oil and gas has not quite taken off as quickly as it should have, or we thought it would, but it is there. And we're finding that one of the things we're running into is we're all experiencing retirement, and we're all experiencing old kinds of assumptions about manufacturing. And we need to educate parents, students, teachers, and I'll talk a little more about that in a few minutes, but we need to educate everyone about the opportunities that are there for growth and opportunity in our community if people have the proper training. We need to also educate them as to the accessibility of some of the training and some of the opportunities that are out there, which won't leave them with huge gaps in loans. You know, they won't have to take out huge loans. They won't have to spend not necessarily 4 years getting viable training. And we need to let people know that that's available, and we've been working toward that, and I think it's absolutely critical.
Thank you, Dale. Molly?
Yes. I definitely believe, Diane, that there is significant opportunity for work in this area. The concern around the gaps between supply and demand has been a significant issue. I can even, speaking from the healthcare industry, one of the things that we often find is at any point in time we may have anywhere, at Humility of Mary, from 200 to 300 job openings at any time. But the gap in finding the actual skills to fill it, the individuals that are prepared to fill it, and the demand, I mean, the gap between the two is just so incredible. I always say that too often I think we focus on the importance of education from the perspective of general education, and we forget that sometimes education, without it being for specific occupations and without it being for those specific occupations that are in high demand, may be worse than no education, because it now means that there are a high level of loans, educational loans, and still no employment. So I really think finding the right match between skills and demand and finding the right way to bring those things together is a critical area of need.
Any comments or questions from the audience regarding this topic? Any questions? Yes.
I'm just curious, and I don't know if this panel is in a position to answer, but you hear that this workforce gap is here, and it's a very real reality. I think there's a lot of activity and groups that are moving forward trying to address that question. But what I hear from employers, beyond the skill set in terms of mechanics, is educationally, their math skills, their ability to assess and to make decisions. And so my question is, as we're looking at this workforce, are we trying to integrate the two? We don't want to just send these kids to a technical school, but they don't have those very fundamental skills that are based in the traditional classroom, and are they being married together so that we do have the ideal workforce?
You want to take it first?
Okay.
Well,
I'll
we
speak
both
to
have an
that
answer,
first.
so.
Yes, I'll speak to that first. I mean, I think you're absolutely correct. There is a real gap. I mean, I think some of the areas of gap are indeed in math skills and in reading skills and critical thinking skills. I mean, those things are very, very real and are indeed challenges. I think, unfortunately, the way that our educational systems approach it in so many ways are about the more general kinds of studies that still render not necessarily that individuals are coming out and don't even necessarily have those particular skills. We've all seen it. And so I think, the change in how we approach education and preparation for going into the workforce, I think, is very critical and a critical element of that. I think as employers, we often are finding ourselves in a position of trying to put remediation programs into our own employer systems, and often, again, not with a lot of success, because that's not our forte. That's not what we have the expertise in. But too often, I think we find ourselves with the need to do that. Another real area of gap is in the area of life skills. Again, when we talk about the opportunities for individuals, and I may be jumping into another question, so I might need to save that, but as we talk about the opportunity gap between the growth of jobs and really, again, the availability of the talent, one of the other areas is life skills. Individuals that don't have the skills to balance a checkbook, individuals that don't have the skills to understand the rules of working within, an employer's environment that may call for behaviors that's very, very different than they've been accustomed to in their life otherwise. I mean, those are significant challenges that somewhere we have to be able to bridge the two.
Dale, maybe you'd like to address some of the conversations regarding behaviors in the workplace.
And yes, Diane, you're expert at that as well. Diane has some very good examples. As far as behaviors in the workplace, we've experienced that, and we've talked about that a lot. I'm going to repeat something that you say that I really like. I've heard Diane say a number of times, that she tries to educate people coming into her shop that, her customers have to trust them. So they have to have a certain kind of look or a certain way of dressing. They have to be clean. They can't have, they can't do this or that. You say it better than I do. What I wanted to address also in the question very quickly was that in terms of trying to educate people, teachers, as to what's needed in the classroom, as far as real jobs out there. When people think of a fitter in fabricating or a machinist, they don't realize that they're using trigonometry every single day. The machinists and fabricators don't realize that, but they have to use it every single day. What we're doing now through the coalition is we've been blessed with a grant, and as of this date, as of yesterday, 22 teachers had signed up for the manufacturer and the educator in the manufacturers program this summer, which is 40 hours that these teachers will spend in various manufacturing plants. They will literally follow the processes through. For instance, at Star Manufacturing, we'll start them out in engineering and take them through the whole sales process, engineering, quoting, They'll go through all the math and skills needed for those, computer skills. Then they're going to go out to the floor, and we're going to flip-flop them between machining and fabricating. So by the time their 40 hours are up, they're going to have a great idea of what to bring back to their students and what to bring back to their classes and to their schools and to their meetings with other educators. And we are so excited about this program that we just can't wait. And we're doing this in a 5-county area, 3 in Ohio and 2 in PA.
Joe, anything you'd like to add?
Well, to add, Sharon, your question, or to answer try to answer your question as far as services in the Work Advance project that has been supported by the Fund for Our Economic Future. We're looking at those assessments. We're looking at how do we assess individuals so that when they can go into the workforce, they have the necessary skills, those from a math and a public speaking and presentation. So we're doing those diagnostic and those assessments to ensure that the potential employees are ready to take that on. And it's something that we do within our own company. We have 320 employees, and we talk about that on an ongoing basis to how can we make sure that we can show up on time, have those soft skills necessary to be a successful employee. And what we do through Work Advance is help assess that and then allow that to be translated into the workplace.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Mike?
Hi, Mike Carriotis, Humble 100. This has to do with what you were just talking about. How far back? In a past life, I substituted time. You could sense a cycle of poverty. It was heartbreaking. And you could also tell that by the time a student was in middle school, they'd already decided if they were going to be a productive member of society or not. Is there any programs to impress life skills and work ethic on children from kindergarten to third grade? Is my first question. My other question, and Diane might be able to speak to this, how many of our adult population with high school and maybe technical school backgrounds are unable to be hired into jobs because they can't pass a drug test? And then a guy that does pass his drug test shows up after only being on the job a couple of weeks drunk. I mean, how are we going to get around these very real problems?
Can I reply? Mike, for a couple of points. The work of the United Way through the support of PNC for Success by Six is working hard on that pre-K and K activity. And there are many other prevention activities that are going on and activities that are helping the children in the elementary arena to learn more of those life skills. Secondly, and this is something that, I really think that I wish Larry Moliterno from Meridian Community Care was here, because they do thousands and thousands of pre-employment drug tests every year. And there is this misnomer out there that people can't pass a drug test. And they see it's from what my conversation with them, it was like 5% or below, where people were saying, oh, well, it's much higher. It's 55%, 60% of the people can't pass a drug test. Their organization is doing pre-employment drug tests for many people throughout this area, many businesses, and they're not seeing that trend at all of people not passing drug tests. And so that's something that I think that really needs to be discussed and have some further discussion, because I think it's truly a misnomer.
Do you think, though, that people are just not showing up to take the drug test? It's because they know they won't pass it?
That's a true possibility, and I believe a lot of employers show that they say that you're going to have to take a pre-employment drug test beforehand. But going back to, I guess, one other question about getting to work, think about the aspect of somebody not having an alarm clock. Everybody has, is what we believe, an alarm clock. If you're going to choose between putting some food on your plate and buying a clock that's going to wake you up to go to school or go to work, there are segments of our society that don't really have an alarm clock. And so when we say, why can't you get to work on time? Are you going to pick and choose between what are you going to get? And I understand an alarm clock is not very expensive, but that is real and it's present that we see.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just had a question. It's probably more towards Joe, because you have boots on the ground in the community with these people as far as barriers you spoke to earlier. So what would you say that your organization is seeing as what's represented as, say, a number one barrier that you see over and over again? And what organizations are maybe addressing those issues?
Transportation is probably one of the largest barriers to get to jobs. at times when jobs are available, and I know that WRTA works very, very hard to try to meet those needs, but from a public infrastructure standpoint, getting people to areas where jobs are, Saturdays and Sundays, holidays, there's businesses that do not close down, and we unfortunately lose the opportunity for the persons that we serve that can't get to those jobs when they are available.
I would say for us, Molly and I are both shaking our heads. Transportation is a big thing. We have, although we have a sign on our front door which states that we will drug test you, and it's on our application. So we've literally had people walk to the front door, turn around, and walk away. We have had that. So I can't say how many would have failed. We occasionally do have people fail drug tests, though. Even though they know they're going to be tested, and they pretty much know when they're going to be tested, they do fail. And we have had people who have passed the drug test and then a short time later do exactly as you say. That is still, it's not maybe as prevalent as it once was, but it still is a problem for us. But I would say transportation, Molly, also, yeah, transportation.
Molly, any other barriers you'd like to add?
No, I think we really are hitting on some of the very significant ones in terms of both transportation, in terms of the ability to pass a drug test. I think is definitely in that number. It's sad as it is in the years of, here we are in 2013. I also still believe that unfortunately there are indeed still some very discriminatory practices as it relates to employment and opportunities. And, those are things that we all are always trying to work on and figure out ways to really work with. But I think that, too, represents a major barrier. When we think about who's being left behind, we think of things like ex-offenders. We think of those who may have substance abuse problems. We think of those that have grown up in a structure of poverty and work and think and act from the framework of someone in poverty as compared to in the middle class construct that we operate our businesses and our organizations on. So I think, those really represent some of the key barriers that will continue to leave behind individuals from the opportunities that are there.
And I think the other big one would be that there has not necessarily been accessibility or the public perception of accessibility to good training programs, because I know the NEO program has a lot of healthcare training and we're modeling a lot of our thing. We're trying to do kind of the same type things that they're doing and following their model to some extent. And I think that's been one of the big issues too, that people haven't seen that opportunity for that accessible kind of training that now we're trying to educate everybody. And we've aligned all the training centers, and the universities, and we're trying, and the high schools and junior highs now in our entire region. We're trying to get everybody aligned, and we've had great success with the social agencies, all educational institutions, and all support systems. We've received a lot of local funding, which has helped us enabled us to do that, and we are trying to break down that accessibility and knowledge barrier of those opportunities that are there, and we're trying to reach minorities and women to get into the programs and show that they're not accessible. You don't need a lot of money. You don't, there in many of the programs we can work out transportation, or the program can help work out transportation. There are grants available, things like that. Those kinds of things will help us get the work pool that we're going to need in the future for the new kinds of training and jobs that are out there now, even in manufacturing and also in healthcare. People have to be more versed in, it's not all automatic and pushing buttons in either of our fields anymore. It is very specific, and you've got to think. And I think we've all thought that computers were going to take the place of thinking. It's going exactly the opposite way. And we're just trying to educate everyone on those lines.
Okay, changing gears here. Where do you see signs of progress in promoting growth and opportunity, and where do you see the greatest need for more efforts, effective efforts to promote growth and opportunity? So Molly, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I think where we see the progress is in some of the collaborative efforts that have been taking place across our communities. It's really when we pull together individuals from various backgrounds and various walks of life that we truly find the greatest abilities to have some success. Some of the comments that were made by Dale here just a little bit earlier related to Neil Health Force was a good example of that. Again, the ability to pull together educators and the healthcare community to be able to pull together legislators and those that are making the key decisions and really be able to tackle things together. You know, one of the successes we had is some positions, roles, are not positions that you go to college or go to a technical school and you can really get certified or trained in that, particularly in healthcare and I'm sure in manufacturing as well. You need the skill, you need the training, but quite frankly, it's not something that you can go to and walk away with a particular degree or a particular certification in. And so one of the examples of the success was the ability to collaborate with the education community and with the healthcare providers and actually create the first apprenticeship in the state of Ohio. Ohio had no healthcare apprenticeships prior to that. And that was a real success story because it showed the ability to create something that created opportunities, created job opportunities for individuals to be able to come into and get employed that wouldn't have existed out there in any kind of program otherwise. So I think those are glimmers of hope and success that we've been able to have.
Joe?
Well, I mean, I would echo what Molly said about the Neo Health Force, but I also would add to the manufacturing coalition as just shining examples. And you know, another example that I think is continues to be a jewel in our community is the Youngstown Business Incubator, and how pulling things together, people with common goals, common strategies, where you want to talk about what do we need to do, or who needs to be involved. I think we all need to be involved. I think business sector, it needs to be a very strong public-private partnership. And I think our Work Advanced project is also one of those examples. We are working with individuals that have gotten into manufacturing jobs at V&M Star, at Alliance Abrasives, Daring Compressor, Buckeye Transfer, where people are getting into careers. And I take that back. I don't want to say a job, because they're getting into careers where there is upward mobility. The same thing with our partnership with Humility of Mary, people entering in as a state-tested nurse's aide and moving to an LPN, moving to an RN, moving up the career to be a director of nursing. It's happening, and that's one of our a success story that I like to share, is that a woman came out of with several children out of poverty, out of a cycle of poverty, that started in the very lowest level of healthcare and became a director of nursing.
Dale?
For brevity, I echo both Molly and Joe, and what I said before is also very relevant. There's one factor that I didn't mention that has been very significant here. Besides all of the community efforts that have supported all the collaborative efforts, we have had an exceedingly helpful and very supportive media across the board. Our media is very, very supportive and has helped us get the word out. And that has been very significant in our community, and I don't think that happens. I don't think they show so much interest as ours do, but they're very, very good at helping us spread the word on what is going in our community. So we do have to include the media as being part of all of these collaborative efforts, because I know they're in your groups, I know they're in our groups and yours as well. So that's a big factor, because we have to get the word out, and we can't afford to pay advertising to get that information out. And so our media has been our advertising agency for us, as well as word of mouth.
Questions or comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
I feel there's a lot of good conversation about training a younger, maybe in the middle-aged workforce, or retraining them. But I sometimes feel that there is a group that is left out of that conversation. I'd like your viewpoints on that. The group I'm talking about is a group that is in the 55-plus category. There were a lot of people, especially in the economic crisis that we experienced in 2009, you know, they wound up losing their jobs. These are managers. These are technically skilled people with great organizational skills. I think there are architects that I know offhand. And in fact, I can number myself in that group. And people like us with enormous skill sets, you know, we wind up having to go to work at JCPenney. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We have some great suits on sale. But my question is, I mean, would you agree with that assessment that group might be getting left behind? And I think that one of the reasons also that happens, there are risk managers out there that see somebody who's 55 and not 35. Who are you going to choose? Okay, I think that's part of the argument. But do you agree with that assessment? And if you do, what can we do about it? Because we have an enormous opportunity, an enormous talent pool that I'm convinced it's out there that employers can take advantage of and bring back into the marketplace. What do you feel about that?
As far as we go, we have about 65 employees, and of our employment force, we have over half who have 20 years or more. We've recently, in the last 2 years, hired about 4 people who are over 55. So what I see coming through, though, in applications very often is we will receive an application from someone who does have experience in maybe another field, but right on the top of that application is manager. They want to automatically be a manager or come in and manage something, and what we're looking for are really skills. We're looking for someone who is more specific in skills or who we can train into skills. Right now, as for us, our admin staff, we at this time don't need to add. We think we may be adding an engineer in the near future, but what we need are people who are willing to go and learn some of the skills that we need that are more hands-on at this time. And actually, we've called back some older workers and said, you've got these skills and these skills. I don't know if we can't hire a manager right now, and you don't have the skills that it would take to do what we need, but would you be willing to work on the floor? And the answer is usually no. I mean, I'm being honest. That's usually what has happened. Because, as I said, in the last 2 years, we've hired, in our small company, we've hired 4 persons over 55 who did not even work in our industry before, and we've trained them.
Molly?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that as well, because I think you really are hitting on something. Again, I think in healthcare, when we look at resumes that are coming through, quite often we are finding resumes of individuals that have worked in various industries and various opportunities, and they really are. Any job that comes up, they're applying for and they're looking for, trying to say, can I come in and just be a business manager? Can I come in and just be a manager of others? Or can I come in and come into some kind of leadership kind of role? And I do believe that's a dilemma that I think we have, because you're right. There's often great talent that is out there. There are individuals that have given their life to a specific industry, a specific area of growth, and then find themselves without employment due to whatever things that may have happened along the way, organizations that reduce, or various kinds of things. I think the dilemma is, even in healthcare, we're often looking, the places where we have the vacancies are often for positions that require some clinical skills, and that's what we're really looking for most times. Is we're looking for a nurse or a radiology technician or a respiratory therapist. And the good news, though, is that I think we have some great success stories, because we employ a number of individuals who have worked in a first career, gone back and become a respiratory therapist or a registered nurse or one of those other clinical roles, and then come into healthcare as a second career. And they make wonderful second careerists because they've been through, they are mature in their thinking and in their critical thinking skills. They learn the compassion that maybe in their earlier life that they might not have had, but they make wonderful second careerists. So I think there's some hope in that, but it is a dilemma in just looking at the number of resumes we get with individuals that have no skill whatsoever in healthcare, but are coming in applying for business or leadership or management. Most of the healthcare arena is built on a structure where the example you gave a little bit earlier, Joe, which is you're starting in a clinical role, and then you work up and become the leader of others because you're the nurse that really understands those things the best and can really work with that. So I think that is a challenge we have.
So the issue.
And on a note,
oh.
I'm sorry, Diane, on a note with that, over half of our administrative staff has moved up from the floor. They've had those skills first, they've learned those skills, and then we move them into the floor. We do that before we ever look for anyone from the outside. We try to move into any management position anyone who has those skills, and we basically do the same thing.
So the issue may not be the employment of those 55 and over, but the underemployment of those 55 and over. Joe?
I think it can be underemployment, but I also think it's a matter of taking a look at skill transfer. Many times people are in their job and in their career, and they assimilate all that they can do is this particular task. And when you line up the skill sets that are associated with that task, most people then don't look and say, well, we can assign this to this other profession. And we did work with individuals at Delphi that when they lost their jobs, they may not have ever had a resume, but we created the resume and took a look at all of their skill sets and said, these are other career opportunities that they never even gave consideration to because they were focused in on this type of work. And so even if you've gone through multitudes of or several different job or careers, taking and analyzing that skill set and seeing what other jobs or careers are out there that can utilize that skill set is something I think we don't advertise enough, that is available, that people can take advantage of.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask a few questions for you to think of and position your response. How do you think the civic leaders in the Valley should work together to promote more growth and opportunity? Clearly, there's no one job or one organization that can accomplish this. Are the key stakeholders in the Valley ready to collaborate to promote more growth and opportunity? What role do you see your organization playing? And how would you like other organizations to work together?
Can I be brutally honest?
Sure.
The civic leaders that work together in the community, they work together in the community, and I think there's sometimes when we don't have safe space to have a conversation and have a discussion where we can agree to disagree and not take it personally. And truly, from my perspective, there's points in times when I look at people that have been in this arena for many, many years, and I would ask to say, maybe is it time for you to move on to a different career instead of holding others back and holding others who want to see progress and unity? Look at a different career or retire. But I mean,
but how do you really feel, Joe?
I don't want to. I mean, it's not. I mean, it can be perceived as negative, but it's about opportunity. It's about what we all share as a vision together. I don't think we share a vision of gloom and doom. I think we share a vision of opportunity and growth. But it's a matter of leave your ego at the door, sit down and have some discussion about how we can collectively. We're going to agree to disagree on things, but I am positive that we are going to agree on many more things than we disagree on. And going back to what was said about everybody bringing their own pebble, everybody has something to offer. There's different ways to make the soup. And somebody might bring potatoes tomorrow, but they might bring corn the next day. We're all looking at the same goal, and I think that the civic leaders, both business leaders, elected officials, community service leaders, all can sit in the same room and agree to disagree, but I believe we would all agree on growth and opportunity needs to continue, and it has to be sustainable. And we have to be grown up enough and professional enough and open enough to sit down and have those just candid discussions.
Dale, you both look so eager.
I would like to see the civic leaders in our region become regional. Instead of Warren civic leaders getting together and talking about Warren, Youngstown talking about Youngstown, Howland talking about Howland, et cetera, et cetera. I would like for everyone to get together and talk about the common problems of our region, because I think we have regional problems and issues to solve. I think we have regional successes as well. And I just don't think I don't think you can go past the Howland or Niles line and go into Warren and divide everything up. For instance, I go to church in Warren, right down by, it's right past the police station, right next to a funeral home. It's very uplifting every Sunday morning to drive in. And not to, but anyway, it's not the most beautiful area. And, if you happen to be there at night, it's kind of a scary place because it's kind of dark and it's kind of creepy. But, that's the reality of our situation. But I live in Howland. I shop in Niles. I just don't think that we can differentiate those things, and I would like to see our whole region sitting together a lot more. I think we have seen such success over a 5-county area, and especially the 3-county area in Ohio, with the Manufacturing Coalition, that we know that we started out, and this is a kind of a catchword now, we literally pointed fingers at each other at the first few meetings and were really almost evil, ugly faces and everything. And we got over the finger pointing and blaming each other. And now we are into such incredible dialogue that, we call all sides call each other for, okay, we've got this going. Can you do this? Can you do that? It's awesome. I mean, Jeff, you sat down, and Jan, you both sat down with us on some of our first funding requests, which we really appreciated because it enabled us to get this going. So it took that regional effort, and you were looking at funding on a regional basis, not in an isolated incident. You were trying to look at the region in general. And I really hope, I wish that our civic leaders could do the same thing.
Molly?
Yeah, I was, Diane, I really think that there's a great opportunity to learn from the collaborations that exist and the successes that we have had in the past around collaborations. When I think about it, I think collaborations are really founded on a couple of key principles. I think one is a sense of trust. The individuals that are coming together, the civic leaders from multiple locations and multiple industries and multiple aspects or walks of life, all have to trust one another, and that we're all there for doing the right thing, making the right thing happen out of it. Sometimes I think we too quickly and too prematurely assume that nothing's ever going to come out of it. We think that dialogue doesn't lead to progress. And without dialogue, you'll never get progress even ignited and started. So too often we shut down the dialogue too early because we're concerned about positions, we're concerned about not trusting, we fear what may come out of it or what may be said, or we take it too personal or whatever it may be, and we don't allow the dialogue. I think the other thing that's really important in collaborations, and I think we learned this from Neil Health Force, and I'm sure also from the Manufacturing Alliance as well, is that we have to have some mutual goals and some common ground. And it really takes looking for that, because coming from different walks of life, coming from different industries, coming from different parts of our communities, coming from different socioeconomic groups, we think we don't have as much in common. Again, when I mentioned discrimination earlier, I wasn't mentioning it in the vein of intentional. It is natural of every single one of us sitting in this room that who we tend to include tends to be people that we are more in the know with, that we may look like a little bit more, that we may act like a little bit more, that live in the same neighborhood or work in the same organization. That's a very natural function of life. And, it takes the ability to recognize that, accept that, and to know that that is normal, that's natural, it's human. And then how do we get beyond that to know that we really do have interests, that Howland and Girard and Youngstown and Warren, we have things in common. Akron and Canton and Cleveland. I think, again, being in a divisional role, I've had to think much more broadly about Northeast Ohio. I've had to think about Toledo and Lorraine and not leave them out of my mindset, and had to think about how we have things in common, and a lot more in common than we have differences as it relates to that. The last thing that I'll mention is that I also think, as a part of collaborations, one of the key lessons we've learned is how important it is to be inclusive. And inclusive means getting people to the table that aren't normally at the table, and having them be a part of the dialogue, and having them be a part of helping us figure out the solutions. If there was one message I would have for our civic leaders, I'd love to see them, again, be catalyst of that kind of thinking. How do we build the mutual trust? How do we be more inclusive? How do we find the common ground instead of the differences that we have? And then how do we generate movement by providing enough time for us to have the dialogue?
Okay, thank you. Jeff, this is your call. I've exceeded my time frame by 10 minutes. Do you want me to continue with the individual questions, or go ahead and introduce Mike? Okay. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Mike Shafranco. Mike is the president of Civic Commons, and he's going to talk about the online What Matters to Metro's Community Forum. Welcome, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you all very much for having me. As Diane noted, I am Mike Shafranco. I am the president of the Civic Commons, and if I click this, it'll advance to the slides, correct? Okay, great. So before I get into Civic Commons, I just want to note we've had a wonderful conversation here today, as far as I can tell, a very engaged audience that's present here. I think there's about, 40, 50 of you. But as the panelists just noted, how many people are not a part of the conversation here? Not because they didn't want to be, but because either they couldn't make it, because they have jobs that don't allow them to be here, because they're perhaps working in the factories and other places that don't let them out for events such as this. And so what is the mechanism to have the conversation beyond forums like this? And the hope is that you do, in fact, use something like the Civic Commons to continue the conversation had here today, but also include others. And I'll get into that, what that is here in a second. So I'm going to... All right, I'll keep pressing. Oh, there it is. Okay. So... Civic Commons is actually a platform that was born out of the efforts of the Fund for Our Economic Future to engage the region. Some of you may recall the Efficient Gov Now contest that the Mahoning Valley was successful in winning twice because of your efforts to really rally around efforts that are happening here. And the idea was to create a platform for engagement that sort of sustained the test of time. There wasn't an episodic engagement around any one particular issue. It wasn't a singular contest. It was really a platform for ongoing dialogue. And so that's what we've built with support from the Knight Foundation and continue to work on throughout the region. And so we hope that you do visit theciviccommons.com/whatmatters. It's on the sheet, that one of the sheets that were provided to you today. And basically what it is these conversations are being had throughout the region about what matters to metros. There's a lot of data and links to data that Emily talked about today. And then there are conversations happening in each of the big metro areas of the region, Akron, Canton, Youngstown, Warren, and Cleveland. So the idea is not only that you use this site to continue the conversation that you've had here today, to include people that maybe were not able to join us here today, but then you start to sort of see how the conversations overlap across the metro areas, across Northeast Ohio. And I think what you'll find is that the conversations are very similar, that people are just as interested in inclusion and talent development in Canton as they are in Youngstown, as they are in Akron, as they are in Cleveland. So again, we hope that you take advantage of this tool. Again, theciviccommons.com/whatmatters. And if you have any questions, please let me know after the meeting is over today. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. So we draw our stimulating conversation to a close. I want to thank Emily and her research team for really the quality of work that you have now put forth into the world and into our specific community that has stimulated this kind of dialogue and I think also informed our actions going forward. We do want to thank our co-sponsors, the Youngstown Foundation. Jan, thank you very much. Diane, Trumbull 100, Nancy, the Community Foundation of Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio, and one of these days we're going to have a marketing focus group to shorten that name for you at some point. And certainly the Fund for Our Economic Future for being a great partner and helping us bring the Mahoning Valley into a regional conversation. At the very beginning, many weeks ago of this planning conversation to organize today's dialogue, there was a fear that we didn't want to have this event be, oh, woe is me, more bad news from the economics for the Mahoning Valley. We've heard it all, we've lived it, enough. But I think what's really happened today is totally the reverse. We've got some really good, reliable information that has informed a dialogue and about solutions and success of moving forward. So thank you all for being higher-minded and looking forward as opposed to looking backward. So do take advantage of the Civic Commons online dialogue, and thank you very much for being part of this.